I'm going to try and sound enthusiastic, but this is a pain in the arse to do. Chances are, if you're watching this, you're interested in how I made these Street View road trip videos, I guess they're called. It's not complicated, but it does take effort to set up. There are a few components involved. I'll talk through them first to give you an idea of what's required, then go through the actual setup if you're still watching by then. There are better ways of doing this. I found this the simplest. Common sense, first we'll start with a capture. You're going to need a local web server. It's not that hard. I use Xampp, Xampp, download it, click install, keep hitting next. Once it's installed, you click run, there's your local web server. On the web server we run a website. The one I use was ripped and butchered by someone who either has more time than me or is more talented, you choose. The website requires a Google Developer API key, which accesses the Maps API. Now there is a cost involved with this. It's tiny and Google give you credit of something like $150 a month. To put that into perspective, with all the testing I've been doing, I don't think I've ever come close to $1. Apparently if you do get close to your limit, Google sends you a notification email, but I wouldn't know. In terms of generating the Street View content, that's everything set up. It is possible to capture and export the images using the web page. However, for me it was causing major performance and memory issues. But this was supposed to be a bit of fun and I don't have time to mess around with it. So I took another route. I use a Ruby script to drive the capture mechanism. The Ruby script opens a web browser which then goes to the website. The browser will be borderless full screen, so all you see is the Street View image. Every time the website loads a new image, as in it takes a step along the route, the browser title changes to the current datetime value. The Ruby script runs in the background and watches for these changes. When it detects a change, it sends a system-wide hotkey. That hotkey is assigned in Bandicam to take a full screen single frame image capture. Those images are then dumped in a local folder, named after the date time they were taken. So long as we play the route in sequence, the images will always be in sequence. Yes, it's a bit long-winded, but even using Selenium to take screenshots was causing corruption or performance issues. This was the quickest and most reliable method for me. Compiling is what takes the most time. By now we have all the images sorted in a local folder. However, due to quirks in the Street View navigation, we're left with many duplicate images. Thankfully, these are all in sequence. These duplicates are exact in size and can be deleted with a simple Ruby script. But that won't fix them all. There are further issues with camera snapping or minor adjustments which can only be verified and fixed by a manual inspection. This will take fucking ages. There's no way around it. Once the manual inspection is complete, we drag the images into something like Adobe Premiere, lower the frame times and export. Then we have our final video. The entire process on a decent sized video, say around 10,000 images, probably take a couple of days, if you're doing this for a bit of fun in your free time. 10,000 images taken at a 2-second interval, I do 1.8 seconds I believe, would be close to 6 hours just capturing the images. You can do image capture through code, but I had very little success in getting this to run reliably. If you really want to make one of these, have the free time and the patience to set it up, continue watching. Installing the web server, Xampp. Go to apachefriends.org/download.html and pick out the version you want. The system doesn't use PHP. I'm using Windows 8.1.5. Click the download button, put it somewhere intelligent, wait a few seconds, close the web page, then run the installer. There's a very useful warning message about UAC. I'm not sure why people would still have that enabled, but some people do. Select everything, install it any way you want. Root of your C drive is fine. You can uncheck this bitnami crap. It'll take a while to install. And that's your web server installed. You don't need to run the control panel, so uncheck this and finish. Though the web server is installed, it's not running. It has a manual start-stop process we can use. If we open a web browser, get rid of these tabs and open a new one, go to 127.0.0.1. This is our local host. You could just type localhost. I prefer numbers. It won't be able to connect because the server's not running. If we minimize this, then go to the place where Xampp is installed, C/Xampp. Near the end of the file list is Xampp start, stop and control panel. All we need is start and stop. Start starts the server and stop does something else. Run Xampp start. I'm going to open these to both public and private because I don't care about security. Private should be fine. And the server's now up and running. If we go back to the web browser and refresh the page, these security risks can all be accepted. That confirms our local server is running and accessible. All local web files are held in the Xampp htdocs directory. This is /dashboard/. referencing the /dashboard directory in htdocs. This is forwarded by index.php. Anything named index is read as default. If you ever want to shut down the server, it's recommended you don't simply close the window. Go back to the root Xampp install directory, run Xampp stop. We can confirm it's down by refreshing the web page again. Job done. Now we install the website. Open the Xampp install directory, run Xampp start, open the htdocs folder in this directory. In here there should be loads of files, delete them all, we don't need them. That's the default localhost website we saw before. We can have multiple websites in here, it's just easier to start from nothing. If we open a web browser and go to 127.0.0.1, we see an empty file list. I'm going to minimize this, and on my desktop is the zipped up website. Right click, extract all. The default directory will be the same as the zip, so the desktop, that's fine. You can uncheck show extracted files. Click extract, and there should be a folder on the desktop named streetview_capture. Drag this folder into the htdocs directory, and the website's installed. Xampp has been running throughout, we don't need to stop and start, just treat it like a normal folder. If we bring up the web browser and refresh, there's the folder containing our website. Click on it. The reason our website doesn't immediately load is because there's no index.html. The file we're after is rootviewmobile.html. We could rename this index.html, then it would auto-load when we open the directory. I like it this way so I can inspect things. Click rootviewmobile.html. There's the website we're going to be using. It asks for your location because it assumes you want to plan a route from your current location. You can block it. If we try manually entering an origin, nope. That's because we haven't set up a maps API key. This is set in rootviewmobile.html. Open the Xampp install directory, htdocs, streetview_capture. The only text editor I have on here is Notepad, so open rootviewmobile.html with Notepad and enjoy the formatting. Search this document for key, K-E-Y. Scroll a little further in the document and there should be a web address with the line paste key here. You want to do that. Well, once you have your key, which I guess we're going to do now. Before we go any further, you are going to need a bank card to set up billing. It's very unlikely you'll ever be billed anything, but it needs to be set up or you won't be able to access the APIs. You also get a monthly credit to spank on this. I can't imagine how you would use all that if you're just doing the Street View stuff. If you're happy with all that, let's get cracking. You'll need a Google account. I've created a new one so I can go through this from a first-time user perspective. Open a browser and go to console.cloud.google.com. Log in or create your new Google account when prompted. If you're a new user, that should take you to the Getting Started page. It's not the page we want, but Google. We have to agree to this. There is one useful pop-up I'll leave on the screen. There's your 300 USD credit. I believe this may only last 2 or 3 months, but most APIs also give you free credit per month. We need to create a project to assign our keys to. To the top left of the page is the project list. Click it to open the project window. To the top right, we want to click New Project. So there's a warning that we can only have 12 projects. We'll only need one. The name can be anything. I'm leaving default and just clicking Create. After a while, we should get a success notification. Click the Select Project link here, and that'll take you to the project. If we need to get to it in the future, we can use the project list link at the top of the screen. If you ever lose the left navigation, it's just this burger link at the top left of the screen. Let's enable the APIs. In the search bar to the top of the screen, enter Maps, M-A-P-S. Select APIs, Google Maps Platform. These are all the Google Maps APIs and services. We don't need all of these, realistically 4, but we're going to go with 5 just to be safe. We're going to enable the Directions API, Places API, Maps JavaScript API, Geocoding API, and Geolocation API. You get a $200 a month credit to use all of these. However, the Maps JavaScript API didn't state this on its pricing tab. Instead, it links to a generic billing page which says you should have $200 a month credit for most APIs. Pretty sure it doesn't cost anything. If it does, it's going to be minimal. You may want to investigate, or as we have $300 credit anyway, we can make some calls and see if the credit goes down. APIs are all enabled in the same manner. I'll show you how to do the Directions API I'm sure you can work out the rest. Select the Directions API. Here we can see the pricing details. It does state you get $200 in credit for maps, which should cover the Maps JavaScript API. To enable, click Enable. It will appear under Enabled APIs with another pop-up. If we click into it, we can see specific details for that API. To the top right is the Disable button if you ever want to disable it. I have another project going on, so I will jump forward in time a bit to where I've enabled all the APIs. Reminder, you only need places, directions, maps, JavaScript, geocoding and geolocation. We now have a Google developer account with the APIs attached to it. To access these APIs, we need credentials. And there are different types. We're going to go with a very simple API key. From the APIs page, click the credentials link in the left navigation, not the burger menu. At the top of the credentials page, click Create Credentials. From the list, select API Key. And there's your key. You can manually select it or click the link. If you ever lose your key, you can find it on the main credentials page. Although we have a key, if we tried using it, it would throw an error because we haven't set up billing. You have to attach a debit or credit card to your account in case you accidentally go over your limit. To add billing details, click the burger menu to the top left. Select Billing. Click Manage Billing Accounts. On the pop-up, click Create Billing Account. This next part is all personal details, so you'll have to use common sense. Close the tutorial pop-up and you're done. We now have a fully working API key ready to put into our HTML. Before continuing, make sure your API key is copied into your clipboard. Close this window. Open rootviewmobile.html in a text editor. Mine's in C, Xampp, htdocs, streetview_capture. Search for the phrase paste_key_ here. Paste your API key in there. Save, then close this file. Close the folder. Open the web browser. Go to 127.0.0.1. Open the rootview folder. Open rootviewmobile.html. And this time, when we enter two locations, we can plan a route. Assuming the API key works. If you want to see the process running, click the big orange button. This is how I make the videos. Before the frame transitions, a screenshot's taken, and I stitch them all together. Again, you can do screen capture through code, but I had so many issues it wasn't worth the hassle. As we can see, it's running in full screen. All we need now is an application that can perform a full screen image capture with a hotkey like Bandicam. The hotkey is configurable in the Ruby script and Bandicam. PNG is fine for an image, and the shutter sound is quite handy. I can leave the monitor off, have some headphones plugged in, every so often turn up the volume and listen for the shutter sound. If there's no shutter sound after 2 seconds, process is finished. My version of the Ruby script has an email notification system built into it. I stripped it out for this, it's a bit too much effort to set up. If you watch the title of this tab, you'll notice it changes just before a step occurs. This is the datetime value, it's actually Unix time, which the Ruby script watches. When it changes, sends the hotkey, takes a picture. I'm going to assume you've already got your hotkeyable image capture application set up, and with that we're going to install Ruby. Or if you're not happy with Ruby, rewrite the script in whichever language you're happy with. Ruby requires a WebDriver, which we're going to install first. You can use any browser you want. I'm using Chrome as it has good performance. The WebDriver for Chrome is Chrome Driver. You can find it at chromiumdriver.chromium.org/downloads. You don't need to match release versions, but it does help. I'm in Chrome at the moment. If you open the kebab menu to the top right, select Help, About Google Chrome. There's the browser version number which you want to match against Chrome Driver. Mine is 101. I'll close the Settings tab, and it looks like I want the second download down, which takes us to a list of downloads where we have to pick the right one for our OS. I'm going with Windows 32 and dumping it on my desktop. Once downloaded, you can close your web browser, then think of a place where we can permanently store the WebDriver. It needs to be added to the system path, so can't ever move. I'm creating a folder in my root C drive named web_drivers. Then opening that folder. The Chrome driver download was a zip archive, so I'm going to right click it and extract all to my desktop. It extracted to a Chrome driver folder which I'll open, then drag the contained chromedriver.exe into my WebDrivers folder. Simple enough. The C/WebDrivers address needs to be added to the system path. Somewhat annoying in Windows 10 or greater as they keep hiding the option, but it's easy enough to find on Windows 7. I have folder addresses turned on, so I can simply copy the folder address from the folder window. Chances are you're going to have to type this out manually. Right click my computer and select Properties. This machine is usually used as a low-end game server. It's actually pretty good for something that's a decade old. To the left of the screen, select Advanced System Settings, and towards the bottom click the Environment Variables button. Under User Variables there should be a variable for path. If there isn't, click New, otherwise select the path variable and click Edit. New would take us to the same window. We would just enter path, capital P, lowercase ath under variable name. Under variable value we can enter the WebDriver folder path. If there's content already in this box, we append to the end of it. Values are split with a semicolon. We're going all the way to the right, entering a semicolon, then pasting our WebDriver folder path. We can then OK out of all of these windows, and the computer will need a reset for it to take effect. We can't really test this until Ruby's installed, so let's do that next. The Ruby installer can be found at rubyinstaller.org/downloads. At least the Windows version, because this entire project is using Windows. Version isn't too important. I'm choosing latest version with DevKit, downloading to my desktop as usual, then running it. Accept the license, leave add to path and associate with files checked, click install. I'm unchecking documentation because it's worthless to me. After this screen, the install will begin. Once installed, there's a checkbox for installing MSys2. Leave it checked. The MSys2 installer will give us some options. Just press enter. Give it a few seconds. We'll be presented with the same options again. Press enter again, and Ruby's installed. Ruby requires some gems to be installed. Open a command prompt. You may need to run it as administrator on your machine. Gems are installed by typing gem space install space name of the gem. There are two we want to install. Gem space install space WATIR. The last one is gem space install space FFI. With a little magic, a Ruby script is going to appear on my desktop. Always check the contents of any script before running it. Open it with any text editor. It's 4 lines of code. How much damage can we do in 4 lines? Don't answer that. The first line is declaring one of the gems we installed. The next line creates a browser instance. The next line tells that browser to go to bing.com. Finally, we sleep for 5 seconds. If the sleep wasn't there, the browser would instantly close after reaching bing.com. This will verify that Ruby, the gems, WebDriver, browser are all installed and can communicate with each other. Close the script and we'll give it a run. In the command window, I'll navigate to where the script is located. Mine's on the desktop, so it's very easy. cd space desktop, capital D. The script is named go.rb. To run it, simply type ruby space go.rb. Chrome should open. Navigate to bing.com. Wait for 5 seconds. There you go. Apart from copying over some Ruby scripts, the contents of which are going to need some explaining, that's setup complete. We don't need to do any of that ever again, until the hard drive crashes and we need to do it all again. This is the Ruby script which ties all the systems together. It can be placed anywhere. I've placed it on my desktop as go.rb. The require lines load the 2 gems we installed. Then we create our Chrome web browser instance. It navigates to our root view mobile page. If you've put yours in a different location, obviously change this address. Anything mentioning s_old title or s_new title is for monitoring web page title changes. Remember, whenever this changes, a screenshot will be taken. Key events and vk_pause are the key we use to take a screenshot. I haven't used pause since the 90s and it's almost never used by applications, so a safe key to go with. Especially if you want to do this dual screen and continue using your computer. Not recommended, but possible. The browser will never close as we have an infinite while loop. Once the end of the route is reached, it's our responsibility to manually cancel the script. It won't take infinite screenshots because the browser title will stop changing. This is the important part. A new page title has been found and we perform a key press. This commented out line is a way to take a screenshot within the script. No need for an external application. It was causing lots of performance issues and corruption. I left it in case someone wanted to play around fixing it. Or maybe it fixed itself. There are 2 sleep commands. This small one is to slow down the infinite loop. We don't want it firing too fast. This 1.6 second loop is very important. When a step occurs, the image can take a second or two to load. Depends on your internet connection, PC spec and browser choice. Take a picture too quick and it will be a blurred or blocky mess. In the root view webpage there are options to set the step time. It defaults to 1.8 seconds because that works best for me. Setting 1.6 in the script gives us 0.2 seconds to take a screenshot before the next step. 1.7 should be fine, maybe even 1.75. 1.8 would likely result in a lot more corrupt images, especially as we already have a possible 0.01 second discrepancy thanks to the second sleep command. A 0.2 second difference I found reliable. To recap, the only things you need to configure in here are the web address, if different, and this screenshot sleep delay. Maybe the key capture as well. I'd say we're good to capture our first root. I've reset the machine and added some shortcuts to the desktop so I don't have to mess around browsing folders. This is the process for capturing a root. The first step is finding a root. It helps to write the details down, which I'll be doing in root.txt. Even if our capture isn't a loop, we would want to split the root into multiple runs. This is so we can easily recover from an error like internet outage, power failure. If the root gets interrupted, it can be very difficult to pick up from the last position. We have to know exactly where that is, which even for places with road signs can be extremely difficult and time consuming. It's safer to have a short route we can always run again. In a loop route we can't run the entire loop because I removed, or added then removed, the ability to use waypoints. They were very unreliable and caused a lot of confusion. Trying to keep this simple. The easiest way to plan a route is with Google Maps. Open Chrome and go to maps.google.com. Let's find somewhere more interesting than this shithole. How about the Andaman and Nicobar Island? If we try to go into Street View, we'll see the Google car has never heard of it. No roads map, so we can't do this route. How about Vietnam? Hell of a lot bigger country than I thought it was. If we drag the little dude icon, we can see there are lots of roads mapped. The roads don't connect to the south of the country, so we can't do tip to tip. Not ideal, but workable. However, the northern route drops off suddenly after Da Nang. We're missing most of the routes around the north of the country. We could do a capture here, but it's very limited. How about this little island named Beletung? That looks very good. We have a decent loop with a mix of city, rural, coastal and inland routes. There are small breaks in the route which will cause a snapping motion, but so long as terrain doesn't change much, it shouldn't be too noticeable. We can always go into Street View and confirm. It's helpful to take a look around and make sure the images are of usable quality. Sometimes the camera is broken or of such low quality they're not worth the effort. This is a demo, so let's take this route. It's a loop which will split into 3 segments. Each segment should overlap slightly so we can stitch them together. It's nearly impossible to create an exact start and end point which align. To make this simple, we overlap by a street or two. The best points are areas with streets leading off the route, preferably too close together, but we can do anywhere. Start and end points can be place names or coordinates. I prefer to go with the latter as place and road names can throw the route off by a sizable margin. Coordinates are easy to find. Without the Street View dude active, click on a place, mainly to click once or twice slowly, and the coordinates are at the bottom of the screen. Click these and we can copy from the left pane. This is our start point, paste it into the tracking document as such, do the same to get our end marker. Repeat this process for all segments. I'm going to assume they've all been planned and we're ready to start capturing. Minimize the browser, use Xampp start to start the web server. Next we open the image capture application, Bandicam for me. Make sure settings are correct. Hotkey set to pause or whatever you set it to in the capture script. Show mouse cursor off. Shutter sound on. Capture format as PNG or better. And capture file location is set to the correct directory, which it all is. That's all for this application. I have some images from an old session which are delete from my captures folder. Open a command window, navigate to where the Ruby script is, my desktop, enter ruby space go.rb. We could code around this security stuff, but I can't be bothered. We want this window maximized. This automation warning bar needs to be closed. Yeah, the browser title changed, so that shutter sound was a screenshot. Everything's working. This empty bar is a settings link. Never claimed this was a professional setup, it just works for me. Clicking it goes to settings. Highway and toll options can drastically alter a route. I prefer highway off, as a video which is entirely highway driving can be a bit monotonous. Step is the distance between screenshots. 10 is the absolute minimum and sometimes seems too short, causing duplicate images. I use 10 for my videos now, as there's a deletion script which only takes a couple of seconds to run. Interval is the time before the next step is performed. This is 1.8 seconds, with the screenshot script set to 1.6 seconds. If you find screenshots frequently are blurry with segments not loaded, try increasing both these values. Maybe 2000 milliseconds here, and 1.8 or 1.9 in the capture script. The only way out of this screen is to click save. Don't go into the settings screen twice or everything breaks and you need to refresh the page. Saving only works for this session. Automation is considered a private window, so won't persist to the next session. Paste the coordinates from our tracking dock into the to and from boxes in our capture page. Clicking outside either of these boxes triggers a lookup. And that's the route. The wrong route. We could have validated this route previously in Google Maps directly, but even then I found it frequently presented different routes. We'll have to change the route for this segment by moving the endpoint further northeast, around here. Update the route in our custom web page. That will do. If we had planned out other segments, they would need updating to match the new route. Let's pretend all that's been done and get to the easy part. To start the route, click the orange button. Now we wait. A very long time. Even longer if you increase the step delay. You may notice a border around the screen. This can be because of secondary monitors, not running in proper full screen, F11, or the browser. In the final stitching process, we can easily increase the scaling to fix this without much loss in detail. This would take out the border and this Google nonsense at the bottom. The cursor isn't being captured, it was turned off in Bandicam. Image capture resolution will be whatever the size of our desktop is. If your desktop is 1920 by 1080, that's what the images will be. If you're running a 4K monitor, you'll have images for a 4K video. I'll skip forward a bit to demonstrate why you want to take focus off this window while capturing. That's why. If the window processes mouse or keyboard input, it will display browser controls. I find it best to run on a second monitor, then keep the mouse on the first monitor, or you could unplug all input devices while capturing. To cancel the process for whatever reason, refresh the page. I don't want to waste time running this route, so let's pretend everything's being captured. I like to create a subfolder and then move segmented routes into their own folders. Then if a route ever fails, we don't have to try to figure out where the segments meet. Let's inspect the images. We can use the left and right arrow keys to scroll images in sequence. This first one, not needed. You'll likely find the first couple to be blurry and unusable. Another reason to overlap our route segments. Here is why we need to manually inspect these images. Slight degree offsets like this make the video less fluid. The camera will always snap around to some extent, especially around towns and bends, so we need to minimize it. Or not, make the video however you want. You may have already noticed some duplicate images like these. The duplication script will remove these, but not the slight degree offsets. There is no image software we can use to compare two images with slight offsets, as each image would naturally be different from the previous. We can only safely remove duplicates. We can delete images in this stupid Windows 7 preview program by pressing delete on the image we're viewing, which makes the journey smoother. The Windows 10 image viewer doesn't do this annoying preview thing when loading up images, so is better suited for preview runs, assuming you don't want to do it in Premiere, which would be more intelligent as we can see the final output. This image has not fully loaded and left us with a blurred mess. There is a way to sort of filter these out. We have the file name, so let's inspect it in the captures folder. Look at the size, 1.37 megabytes. The image before this was 2.84 megabytes. The one after was 2.61 megabytes. It's over a megabyte smaller because of blurring. However, this makes an assumption on image contents. Maybe we're cruising along the coast and there's an image or two containing mostly blue sea. They would be significantly smaller in size than the others. If we were deleting based on size, we could lose those good quality images. Now, I was working on a C# application to predict these based on file size. Gave up as I still needed to manually look through these images anyway. May finish it. If I do, I'll put a link in the description bundled with a how-to. Speaking of images, there is some magic to this process. If we look very closely, the images are full of watermarks. I don't believe anyone has ever noticed these in the videos I've made. I guess it's eye magic with how we process images and the way frames blur together. Pretty cool, just noting that there are watermarks over every frame. That's all there really is to it. The worst part of this process is setting up tools. It only needs to be done once. The most boring part of all this is manually sitting through the video. We can be talking thousands of images depending on journey length. You need to be focused. Doesn't have to be done in one sitting, but it's still a lot of time invested in something people probably aren't going to watch? I'll end this with how to compile the video. Here is Premiere. Create one or more bins depending on how many capture folders you created. Drag the capture images into their respective Premiere bins. I only have one capture folder, one bin, one sequence. Wait for them to process. This can take a very long time. Create a new sequence, one for each segment of your journey, a segment being a capture folder. Sequence settings are at your discretion. It helps to name the sequences and their relative bins the same. Drag the images from your bin into the new sequence, making sure they're organized correctly. This next part requires some trial and error. We need to reduce the time for which each image is displayed. Use a small selection of images, maybe 40 or 50. A few thousand will take a while to process. We want to change this from a slideshow to something more like a movie. Select your images, right click one of these images, select speed/duration. The duration should be around 0.04 seconds, maybe. Depends on the frame rate you chose, the step distance, and the actual location. Makes a big difference. Definitely make sure the ripple box is checked. Click OK. Once processed, play your short segment, see how it looks. Once happy, select all your images and apply to every frame. For this, 0.3 may be better. I'll leave it as is. Now, you have to watch the video. The point is to find any places in the video where there's hard snapping. You ideally want to remove any places when the images suddenly snap any more than a few degrees for 1 or 2 frames. It breaks the immersion and looks terrible. This is a big problem in cities where the Google Car GPS can go a little batshit crazy. Also, if on a 2-lane road, the streetcar image will frequently shift from one side of the road to the other. This usually means there is no image on your side of the road, so the next closest is chosen. The trick is to go back and forward a few frames to get an idea of which side of the road you want to keep and which to delete. Jumping from one side of the road to the other is perfectly fine every so often. You don't want to do it every few frames. Very jarring. Once your sequences have been previewed and you're happy to export, right-click the sequence and select New Sequence from Clip. Now we have a single sequence, we can increase the scaling to remove the borders and Google crap. If you have multiple sequences, align them in order and export. There's your video. Very time consuming, but not difficult. A small to medium sized video would likely take 2 to 3 days to complete, working on it in the evenings. To save time, we could check images from a previous segment while the next is recording, another benefit to segmenting routes. Good luck. Guess I should start checking out that C# project. Hopefully I left it somewhere intelligently named, for once.